Elena Vasquez stood at the window of her shuttle as it moved slowly toward Station Kepler 7. The massive structure hung in space like a giant metal flower. Its arms reached out in all directions. Each arm was built for different kinds of aliens. Some parts had thick walls for creatures that needed heavy air pressure. Other parts glowed with strange lights for beings made of energy. Elena took a deep breath. She had been preparing for this day for 3 years. Today she would speak to the Galactic Council. Today she would ask them to let humanity join as full members. After 300 years of waiting, Earth finally had a chance to sit at the big table with all the other species. The shuttle docked with a soft bump. Elena checked her appearance one more time in the mirror. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple style. Her blue diplomatic uniform was perfect. She carried no weapons, only a small device that would translate her words into dozens of alien languages. The airlock opened with a hiss. Elena stepped onto the station and immediately felt the difference. The air was thicker here. It had to work for many different kinds of lungs. The gravity was lighter than Earth normal. Her boots made soft clicking sounds on the metal floor. A tall, thin alien waited for her. Its skin looked like blue glass and it had 4 arms. This was a Zephyrian. Elena had studied their culture for months. She bowed her head exactly the right amount and spoke in their language. "I am honored to walk among the crystal children of Zephyr Prime," she said. The alien's eyes brightened. Few humans could speak Zephyrian properly. The sounds were like music mixed with breaking glass. "Welcome, Ambassador Vasquez," the alien replied in English. "I am Guide Zelmar. I will take you to the council chambers." They walked through long hallways. Elena saw amazing sights everywhere. A group of floating gas clouds drifted past, speaking to each other with flashing colors. Massive creatures that looked like walking rocks stomped by, their steps shaking the floor. Small, quick beings that looked like metal spiders skittered along the walls. Elena had studied all of these species. The gas clouds were called nebulae. They lived in the space between stars and thought very slowly. What seemed like a quick conversation to them might take human years. The rock creatures were granite folk. They lived on planets with crushing gravity and ate minerals. The metal spiders were techlings. They were actually machines that had become alive millions of years ago. "Your species is very young," Guide Zelmar said as they walked. "Most council members have been spacefaring for thousands of years." "Some for millions," Elena nodded. She knew this. Humans had only been in space for a few hundred years. They had only met aliens 300 years ago when a Zephyrian ship found Earth's first colony ship heading to Mars. Since then, humans had been slowly earning the right to join galactic society. "We may be young," Elena said, "but we learn fast, and we want to help make the galaxy a better place." They entered a massive chamber. Elena's breath caught in her throat. She had seen pictures, but being here was different. The chamber was enormous. It stretched up so high that the ceiling disappeared in darkness. Thousands of seats filled the space, each one designed for a different kind of alien. Near the bottom, in seats filled with water, swam the deep ones. They looked like giant jellyfish with bright, intelligent eyes. Higher up, in seats that glowed with heat, sat the fire folk. They were beings of living flame that needed extreme temperatures to survive. In the middle sections, more familiar forms sat in regular chairs. These were the species most like humans. 2 arms, 2 legs, 1 head. But Elena knew that being shaped like humans did not make them friendly to humans. Some of the worst enemies of Earth looked almost exactly like people from her home planet. At the center of the chamber was a platform. Elena would stand there to make her speech. Above the platform, floating in the air without any support, was a crystal formation. This was the voice of the council. It would judge whether humanity deserved full membership. "Ambassador Vasquez," a voice said behind her. Elena turned to see a creature she recognized immediately. It was tall and covered in thick gray fur. Its face was like a wolf's but with larger eyes. This was a Krillian. They were known throughout the galaxy as great warriors. "I am Warsinger Thax," the creature said. Its voice was deep and rough. "My people have fought beside humans in the border wars." "You are brave fighters," Elena smiled. The border wars had been small conflicts on the edge of known space. Pirates and raiders had attacked both human and alien settlements. Humans and Krillians had worked together to stop them. It had been good practice for human-alien cooperation. "Thank you, Warsinger," Elena said. "We hope to do much more working together in the future." The Krillian's ears twitched. Among his people, this meant agreement. "Perhaps. If the council decides you are ready. More aliens approached to greet Elena. She spoke with the Crystal Zephyrians about art and music. She discussed science with the Techlings, whose mechanical voices buzzed like insects. She even managed a simple conversation with one of the granite folk, though their words came so slowly that each sentence took 5 minutes. All around the chamber, aliens were taking their seats. Elena felt nervous but excited. She had prepared for this moment her entire adult life. She knew the history of every species in the chamber. She understood their cultures, their fears, their hopes. She believed she could convince them that humans belonged here. A deep sound echoed through the chamber. It was time for the session to begin. Elena walked to the central platform. As she climbed the steps, she felt thousands of alien eyes watching her. Some of those eyes were friendly. Others seemed suspicious. A few looked openly hostile. The voice of the council began to glow. When it spoke, its words appeared in the air in dozens of different languages and symbol systems. The council recognizes Ambassador Elena Vasquez of the Human-Terran Republic, the voice said. You may present your species' request for full membership. Elena stood at the center of the platform. She activated her translation device and began to speak. Honored council members, she said, I stand before you today not just as a representative of humanity, but as a voice for peace, cooperation, and the bright future we can build together. She had practiced this speech hundreds of times. She spoke about human achievements in art and science. She talked about their colonies, where humans lived peacefully alongside alien settlers. She described human efforts to help other species, like the medical aid they had given to the plague-struck Twilight folk. Humans are young, yes, Elena continued, but we are eager to learn. We bring fresh ideas and strong hearts to any challenge. We have proven ourselves as allies in battle and partners in peace. She saw some aliens nodding. Others whispered among themselves. The crystal beings chimed softly, which meant they were interested. This was going well. We ask not for special treatment, but for the chance to earn our place among you, Elena said. Give us the opportunity to prove that humanity can be a valuable member of this great community of worlds. Elena felt confident. Her words were strong and clear. She could see that many council members were impressed. Even some of the hostile-looking aliens seemed to be reconsidering their positions. She was halfway through her prepared closing when she noticed something strange. Warsinger Thax was no longer in his seat. Elena couldn't see him anywhere in the chamber. That was odd. Krillians were very formal about these things. They would never leave during an important speech unless something was wrong. Elena continued speaking, but part of her mind was alert for danger. Years of diplomatic training had taught her to watch for signs of trouble. Missing delegates could mean many things, and not all of them were good. In conclusion, Elena said, humanity offers its friendship, its strength, and its dedication to the ideals that make this council great. The energy blast hit her from below. Elena felt a moment of incredible heat and pain. Then everything went white. Her body turned to atoms in less than a second. The platform where she had been standing was empty except for a small pile of ash. Chaos erupted in the council chamber. Aliens shouted and screamed and made sounds of fear and anger. Security forces rushed toward the platform. Alarms blared throughout the station. Guide Zelmar's crystal body flashed bright red with shock. Several of the nebulae collapsed into tight balls of terrified gas. The deep ones thrashed in their water tanks, sending waves splashing over the edges. It took an hour to find the weapon. It was a Krillian military disruptor, hidden beneath the platform under a cloth decorated with Earth's flag. The device was set to trigger when Elena spoke certain words that she would naturally use in any speech about human-alien cooperation. The device was sophisticated. It had been placed there days before Elena arrived. Someone had planned this assassination very carefully. Someone who knew exactly what Elena would say and exactly where she would stand. Warsinger Thax was found in a maintenance shaft near the chamber. He was unconscious and had been drugged. When security woke him up, he had no memory of the last 6 hours. Someone had used him to get close to the platform. Someone had stolen his weapon and used it to kill Earth's most important diplomat. As news of Elena's death spread through the galaxy, different species reacted in different ways. The Zephyrians sang mourning songs that sounded like wind chimes in a storm. The Techlings calculated the probability of finding her killer. The Deep Ones dove to the bottom of their tanks and refused to speak to anyone. But on Earth, the reaction was different. In the government buildings of Geneva, in the military headquarters on Luna, in the hidden bases scattered throughout the solar system, humans received the news with cold, silent fury. Elena Vasquez had been more than just a diplomat. She had been a symbol of everything humans wanted to be in the galaxy. She represented their hopes for peaceful cooperation with alien species. She stood for the idea that different kinds of beings could work together to build something better than any of them could create alone. Now she was dead, murdered while asking for nothing more than a chance to prove human worth, killed by someone who thought humans were too dangerous or too inferior to join galactic society. On Earth, President Martinez called an emergency meeting of the World Council. In the Luna military base, General Chen began activating protocols that had been secret for 2 centuries. In research stations throughout human space, scientists stopped their peaceful projects and began working on darker things. The galaxy had sent humanity a message by killing Elena Vasquez. They had said that humans would never be accepted as equals. They had shown that they saw humans as a threat to be eliminated or a problem to be managed. Humanity heard that message clearly, and now they would send a reply. But their reply would not be delivered through diplomats or speeches. It would not come through trade negotiations or cultural exchanges. It would not be written in the careful language of peace treaties or cooperation agreements. Humanity's reply would be written in fire and steel across the stars themselves. The galaxy had chosen war when they killed Elena Vasquez. Now they would learn what war with humanity really meant. The age of human diplomacy was over. The age of human vengeance was about to begin. Captain Marcus Chen stepped off the military transport ship and onto station Kepler 7. 3 days had passed since Elena Vasquez died. 3 days since someone had turned humanity's greatest diplomat into a pile of ash. The station felt different now. Where before there had been busy noise and alien chatter, now there was nervous silence. Marcus wore the black uniform of Earth Defense Force Intelligence. Behind him came his team, 12 of the best investigators and analysts humanity had ever trained. They looked like scientists and diplomats. They were actually something much more dangerous. The Galactic Council had agreed to let humans investigate Elena's murder. They said they wanted to find the truth. Marcus knew better. They wanted to control what humans learned. They wanted to make sure the investigation found exactly what the Council wanted it to find. That was fine with Marcus. Let them think they were in control. Humans had learned long ago that the best way to get real answers was to let your enemies believe they were smarter than you. Guide Zelmar met Marcus at the airlock. The Zephyrian's crystal body was dim with sadness. Marcus could see that the alien actually cared about Elena's death. That was good to know. It meant Zelmar was not part of whatever conspiracy had killed her. Captain Chen, Zelmar said in his musical voice, I am sorry for your loss. Ambassador Vasquez was a good person. She did not deserve to die. No, she didn't, Marcus said quietly. But she's dead anyway. Now we need to find out who killed her and why. They walked through the station toward the council chamber. Marcus's team spread out behind him, moving casually but watching everything. To alien eyes, they looked like humans exploring the station. Marcus knew they were actually mapping security systems, identifying potential threats and recording every detail for later analysis. Marcus had been Elena's friend since their days at the academy. He had watched her prepare for this mission. He had seen her practice her speech hundreds of times. She had been excited and nervous and hopeful all at once. She had believed that humans could find their place in the galaxy through peaceful means. Marcus had never shared that belief. He had studied alien species for 20 years. He knew how they really thought about humans. Most aliens saw humanity as useful pets at best, dangerous animals at worst. Very few actually considered humans to be equals. The council chamber still showed signs of Elena's murder. Scorch marks on the platform. Cracks in nearby walls where panicked aliens had damaged things while trying to escape. The smell of burned metal and fear still hung in the air. Marcus knelt down where Elena had been standing. His instruments detected traces of disintegrated human DNA. Molecules that had once been part of his friend were scattered across the platform like invisible dust. The weapon was a Krillian disruptor, Guide Zelmar explained. Model XK7 military grade. It was hidden under the platform and triggered by voice recognition. Marcus nodded. He already knew all of this from the initial reports. What he didn't know was how someone had gotten a military weapon onto a heavily secured station. He didn't know why they had chosen this particular method. Most importantly, he didn't know who had wanted Elena dead badly enough to start an interstellar incident. "I need to speak with Warsinger Thax," Marcus said. "He has been cooperative," Zelmar replied, "but he remembers nothing. The drugs they used were very strong. They found Thax in the station's medical bay." The big Krillian looked miserable. His gray fur had lost its shine and his ears drooped with shame. Among his people, losing your weapon was a terrible dishonor. Having it used to murder an ally was even worse. "Captain Chen," Thax said in his growling voice, "I have failed your people. I allowed my weapon to be stolen and used against your ambassador." "You were drugged," Marcus said. "That wasn't your fault. What's the last thing you remember before waking up?" Thax's eyes closed in concentration. "I was walking to my quarters after the evening meal. Someone called my name. I turned and saw—" His eyes opened suddenly. "I saw a human in a maintenance worker's uniform." Marcus felt his heart skip a beat. "Are you sure?" "Yes, I thought it was strange. Humans are not allowed to work on this station except in the diplomatic areas. But I was tired and not thinking clearly. I went to ask what he was doing. Then everything went dark." Marcus exchanged glances with his team. A human had drugged Thax and stolen his weapon. A human had helped assassinate Elena Vasquez. This changed everything. "Can you describe this human?" Marcus asked. Thax gave them a detailed description. Average height, brown hair, no obvious scars or marks. He could have been any one of millions of human men. But Marcus's team was already running the description through databases. They would find this person. The investigation continued. Marcus's team spread out through the station, following leads and gathering evidence. What they found painted a disturbing picture. The human who had drugged Thax was named David Park. According to station records, he was a maintenance worker assigned to the diplomatic section. But when Marcus's team checked, they found that David Park had never existed. His identity was fake. His background was false. Even his DNA records had been artificially created. Someone had sent a professional agent to station, Kepler 7. Someone with the resources to create perfect false identities and plant them in galactic databases. Someone who wanted Elena dead and was willing to frame humanity for her murder. But the investigation revealed something even more disturbing. As Marcus's team dug deeper into station security, they found evidence of other operations. Other fake humans working in other parts of the galaxy. Other missions designed to make humanity look bad. "Captain," said Dr. Sarah Kim, Marcus's chief analyst, "you need to see this." She showed him intercepted communications between several alien species. The messages were encrypted, but human computers had broken the codes years ago. What Marcus read made his blood run cold. The messages talked about the human problem. They discussed ways to keep humanity from gaining real power in the galaxy. They mentioned incidents that could be blamed on human aggression or stupidity. They spoke of Elena's murder as just one step in a larger plan. "This goes back years," Dr. Kim explained. "Maybe decades. Someone has been working very hard to make sure humans never become a real threat to the established order." Marcus studied the messages. The senders used code names, but the content made their identities clear. High-ranking officials from at least 7 different species were involved. They called themselves the Shadow Consortium. "What else have they done?" Marcus asked. Dr. Kim's face was grim. "Remember the accident at New Terra Colony? The one where the fusion reactor exploded and killed 3,000 people?" Marcus nodded. New Terra had been humanity's most successful colony. The explosion had set back human expansion by 20 years. "It wasn't an accident," Dr. Kim said. "I found communications about it in the conspiracy files. They sabotaged the reactor and made it look like human incompetence." The list went on. Trading disputes that mysteriously turned violent when humans were involved. Exploration missions that vanished without explanation. Peaceful first contact situations that somehow became hostile encounters. All of it had been orchestrated by the Shadow Consortium. But the worst discovery came when Marcus's team broke into the station's classified files. Hidden in the deepest levels of the database, they found research reports that made Marcus want to vomit. The files contained detailed biological studies of human physiology. Heart rate, blood pressure, pain responses, breaking points. The data could only have come from live experimentation. Someone had been capturing humans and using them as test subjects. The reports were signed by researchers from 5 different species. All of them were members of the Shadow Consortium. They had been studying humans like laboratory animals, looking for weaknesses they could exploit in a future war. "How many people?" Marcus asked quietly. Dr. Kim checked the files. "At least 300 confirmed. Maybe more. They've been doing this for 50 years. Marcus felt something cold and deadly settle in his chest. Elena's murder wasn't just an assassination. It was part of a systematic campaign to study, control, and eventually eliminate humanity as a threat to galactic order. The Shadow Consortium had killed Elena to provoke humans into violent retaliation. They wanted humanity to look like dangerous savages who couldn't be trusted with real power. Then they could justify whatever they planned to do next. Marcus activated his secure communicator and sent a coded message to Earth. Within hours, similar investigation teams would be deployed to every human settlement in the galaxy. They would look for signs of sabotage, infiltration, and conspiracy. They would find the truth about what the Shadow Consortium had been doing to humanity. But Marcus already knew what they would find. Evidence of decades of manipulation and murder. Proof that the galaxy's civilized species had been waging a secret war against humanity for generations. The Shadow Consortium thought they were clever. They thought humans were too primitive to understand complex galactic politics. They thought they could manipulate and control humanity forever. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Marcus sent another message, this one directly to military command on Luna. It contained everything his team had discovered. It included the names of every Shadow Consortium member they had identified. It provided detailed evidence of alien crimes against humanity going back 50 years. The message ended with Marcus's personal recommendation. Elena Vasquez's murder was an act of war disguised as terrorism. The Shadow Consortium has been planning humanity's destruction for decades. We should respond accordingly. On Earth, President Martinez read Marcus's report in his secure bunker beneath Geneva. Around him, the Emergency Council reviewed the evidence with growing anger. These weren't just alien politicians playing political games. These were war criminals who had spent 50 years torturing and murdering human beings. General Chen pulled up classified files that even President Martinez had never seen. Hidden military programs that had been running for centuries, secret weapons that had never been tested, ships and soldiers that officially didn't exist. "How long will you need?" President Martinez asked. "The fleets can be in position within 6 months," General Chen replied. "But sir, once we begin, there's no going back. The galaxy will never see us the same way again." President Martinez thought about Elena Vasquez. He thought about the 300 humans who had died in alien laboratories. He thought about the colonies that had been sabotaged and the ships that had been destroyed and the decades of lies and manipulation. "Elena went to them in peace," he said quietly. "She offered them friendship and cooperation. They answered with murder and deceit. The time for diplomacy is over." He signed the authorization orders. Across human space, military commanders received coded messages. Ships began moving toward predetermined positions. Soldiers prepared for missions they had trained for but never expected to carry out. The Shadow Consortium had spent 50 years preparing for war with humanity. They had studied human weaknesses and planned human destruction. They thought they knew everything about how humans would fight. They were about to discover that they had never understood humans at all. They had studied the wrong things and planned for the wrong war. They had seen humanity's civilized face and mistaken it for weakness. Soon they would see humanity's true face, and they would learn why every apex predator eventually runs out of prey. The message went out simultaneously to every human settlement in the galaxy, from the mining stations in the asteroid belt to the research outposts in the farthest reaches of known space. The same coded transmission appeared on secure channels everywhere humans lived and worked. Condition Crimson. Elena protocol is active. All units proceed to predetermined positions. The mask comes off today. Dr. Jennifer Walsh was examining rock samples on Kepler 442b when the message arrived. To anyone watching, she looked like a simple geologist studying mineral formations on a distant world. The 3 aliens working with her, 2 Techlings and a Zephyrian, thought she was exactly what she appeared to be. They were wrong. Jennifer had been a colonel in Earth Defense Force Special Operations before she became a geologist. Her rock samples contained hidden communication equipment. Her geological surveys had actually been mapping strategic locations and alien weaknesses for 15 years. When the Elena protocol activated, Jennifer calmly packed her equipment and walked to her shuttle. The aliens asked where she was going. "Emergency call from the home office," she said with a smile. "You know how it is. Bureaucrats want their reports on time." What the aliens didn't know was that Jennifer's shuttle wasn't really a shuttle. Under its civilian appearance, it carried enough firepower to level a small city. Hidden in its cargo bay were weapons that could crack planets. Jennifer wasn't the only one. Across the galaxy, thousands of humans suddenly abandoned their peaceful activities and revealed their true purposes. Merchant ships that had been trading between worlds for decades opened hidden weapon bays. Research stations that studied stellar phenomena unveiled massive sensor arrays designed to track enemy fleets. Mining operations in dead solar systems revealed themselves as hidden military bases. The transformation was happening everywhere, and it was coordinated down to the minute. Captain Rosa Martinez commanded what everyone believed was a simple cargo hauler called the Peace Trader. For 8 years, she had carried trade goods between human and alien worlds. Her ship was familiar to customs officials on dozens of planets. They waved her through checkpoints without inspection because she always had proper papers and never caused trouble. When the Elena protocol activated, Rosa's crew got to work. Fake cargo containers fell away to reveal military-grade engines. Civilian hull plating retracted to expose weapon systems that violated 12 different galactic treaties. The cargo bay opened to launch 24 combat drones that had been disguised as shipping containers. In 15 minutes, the Peace Trader became the UES Vengeance, a heavy cruiser with enough firepower to destroy space stations. "This is Admiral Martinez to all hidden fleet units," Rosa said into her communicator. Her rank had been secret for 8 years. Now it didn't need to be. "Begin Phase 1 operations. Make them understand what they have awakened." The same scene played out on hundreds of ships throughout the galaxy. Human vessels that had seemed harmless suddenly revealed themselves as warships. Crews that had appeared to be peaceful traders and explorers showed their true nature as highly trained soldiers. But the ships were only part of it. On Luna, General Chen walked into a military complex that officially didn't exist. For 200 years, humans had been building weapons and planning strategies while pretending to be a peaceful species. The Shadow Consortium thought they had been studying humanity. They had been studying an act. "Status report," General Chen ordered. "All fleets report ready," replied Commander Singh. "Phase 1 forces are in position. Phase 2 assets are moving to staging areas. We can begin operations immediately." General Chen looked at the massive display screen that showed the entire galaxy. Red dots marked the locations of Shadow Consortium worlds. Blue dots showed human assets. There were far more blue dots than any alien species had ever suspected. "What's our intelligence situation?" Chen asked. "Complete," Singh replied. "We know the location of every Shadow Consortium facility. We have detailed maps of their military installations. We know their fleet positions, their supply lines, their communication networks. We've been preparing for this for decades," Chen nodded. While aliens had been studying human biology, humans had been studying alien everything. Every trade mission had been a spy mission. Every cultural exchange had been an intelligence-gathering operation. Every peaceful contact had been preparation for war. Humans had learned patience from their long evolutionary history. They knew how to watch and wait and gather information. They knew how to appear harmless while preparing for violence. They had been doing it for millions of years on Earth, and they had been doing it for centuries in space. "Sir," Commander Singh said quietly, "are you sure about this? Once we begin, we can't take it back. The galaxy will never trust humans again." General Chen thought about Elena Vasquez giving her speech while assassins prepared to murder her. He thought about 300 humans dying in alien laboratories. He thought about 50 years of sabotage and manipulation and lies. "The galaxy never trusted us anyway," he said. "They just pretended to while they planned our destruction. At least now we'll all be honest about what we really are." He gave the order. Across human space, military commanders received their final instructions. Ships began moving toward targets. Soldiers checked their weapons one last time. Scientists activated devices that had been waiting in storage for centuries. The Krillian homeworld of Krylos Prime was a fortress planet covered in military bases and warrior academies. Its people prided themselves on being the greatest fighters in the galaxy. They had fought wars for thousands of years and never lost their homeworld. High Commander Vrax was reviewing defense plans when his aide burst into the command center. "Sir, we have a problem," the aide said. "There are human ships in our outer system." Vrax looked at the tactical display. 3 human vessels hung motionless near the edge of Krillian space. They weren't attacking or threatening. They were just there watching. 3 ships? Vrax laughed. Send a patrol to escort them away. Humans know better than to threaten Krillos Prime. But when the Krillian patrol reached the human ships, they found something unexpected. The ships didn't try to run or fight. They just broadcast a simple message. We are here to discuss Warsinger Thax's stolen weapon. Please prepare for negotiations. Vrax was confused. Humans wanted to negotiate about the weapon used to kill their ambassador? That made no sense. But he was curious enough to agree to a meeting. What Vrax didn't know was that the 3 visible ships were not alone. Hidden throughout the Krillian system were dozens of other human vessels. Using stealth technology that made them invisible to Krillian sensors. They had been there for weeks, studying every military installation on the planet. The negotiations lasted exactly long enough for the hidden ships to get into position. On the gas giant world of Nebula Home, the nebulae were having their daily council meeting. As beings of living gas, they thought very slowly but lived very long lives. Their conversations could last for days and their decisions could take years. They were discussing trade agreements when human ships appeared in their upper atmosphere. The nebulae weren't worried. Humans had been trading in their system for decades. These ships were probably just bringing cargo or picking up nebulae art. The nebulae didn't understand that the human trade ships had been secretly mapping their atmospheric composition for years. They didn't know that humans had discovered exactly which chemical combinations would make nebulae gas burn. On Zephyr Prime, the crystal beings were celebrating the festival of harmonic convergence. Their entire species sang together once every year, creating music that could be heard across their solar system. It was the most beautiful sound in the galaxy. Human research stations had been recording these festivals for 20 years. They had analyzed every frequency and every harmonic pattern. They knew exactly which sounds would shatter Zephyrian crystal bodies, and which frequencies would cause their cities to collapse. The festival was at its peak when human ships arrived. The Zephyrians welcomed them. Humans had always appreciated Zephyrian music. They often came to listen to the festivals. The Zephyrians didn't know that this time, the humans had come to make music of their own. But the most important operation was happening far from any alien world. In the empty space between stars, Admiral Sarah Morrison commanded the largest fleet humanity had ever assembled. 50,000 ships of every size and type waited in the darkness, invisible to alien sensors. Morrison had been Elena Vasquez's best friend since childhood. They had grown up together on Mars Colony. They had dreamed together about humanity's place in the galaxy. Elena had chosen diplomacy. Sarah had chosen war. But they had both wanted the same thing, respect for their species. Now Elena was dead, murdered by the very aliens she had tried to befriend. Sarah was about to make sure that murder was answered appropriately. Admiral, her communications officer reported. All fleet units report ready. Phase 1 assets are in position around 17 target systems. Phase 2 forces are standing by for deep strike operations. Sarah looked at the star chart on her command screen. Each red dot represented a Shadow Consortium world. Each blue dot represented a human fleet waiting to attack. The aliens had thought they were fighting a primitive species with a few hundred ships. They were about to learn that humans had been building fleets in secret for 2 centuries. They were about to discover that peaceful human colonies had actually been military bases in disguise. They were about to find out what happened when you murdered someone that 8 billion apex predators cared about. Open a channel to all alien worlds, Sarah ordered. Her communications officer worked for a moment, then nodded. Channel open, Admiral. Every inhabited system in the galaxy will receive this transmission. Sarah activated the recording system. Her message would be broadcast on every frequency used by every species in the galaxy. No one would be able to claim they didn't hear it. My name is Admiral Sarah Morrison of the Terran Navy, she began. 3 days ago, your Shadow Consortium murdered Ambassador Elena Vasquez, while she was asking for nothing more than peaceful cooperation between our species. Sarah's voice was calm and cold, like winter wind across a battlefield. You thought you were sending us a message. You thought you were showing us that humans would never be accepted as equals in galactic society. You thought you could manipulate us and control us forever. She paused, letting the words sink in across thousands of worlds. You were wrong. This is not a declaration of war. War implies that both sides have a chance to win. This is a notification of extinction. You have 6 hours to surrender completely, or we will demonstrate why Earth's apex predators spent millions of years with no natural enemies. The transmission ended. Across the galaxy, alien leaders stared at their screens in shock and confusion. Some laughed. Humans couldn't possibly be serious. They were a young species with limited technology and small fleets. But a few aliens remembered old stories about Earth. Stories about a world where every animal was trying to kill every other animal. Stories about how humans had climbed to the top of their food chain by being more vicious and more clever than anything else on their planet. Those aliens started evacuating their worlds immediately. The others kept laughing right up until the shooting started. The war began with silence. High Commander Vrax stood in his command center on Krillos Prime, staring at sensor readings that made no sense. The 3 human ships that had been asking for negotiations were still there, hanging motionless in space. They hadn't moved for 6 hours since Admiral Morrison's ultimatum. "Sir," his sensor operator said nervously, "should we attack them?" "They're just sitting there." Vrax studied the tactical display. Krillian warriors were used to direct confrontation. When someone threatened them, they fought back immediately. This waiting was unlike anything they had experienced. "They're playing games," Vrax growled. 3 ships against our entire home fleet? They're either crazy or planning something." He was right about the planning part. At exactly 6 hours after the ultimatum, the human ships finally moved. But they didn't attack. Instead, they turned and began flying away from Krillos Prime, accelerating slowly toward the edge of the system. "Sir, they're retreating," the sensor operator reported. Vrax felt a mixture of relief and disappointment. He had been looking forward to crushing human arrogance, but maybe they had realized how outmatched they were. "Let them go," he ordered. "Send a message to the fleet. Stand down from alert status. The humans have seen reason." That was Vrax's first mistake. His second mistake was not noticing that Krillos Prime's moon had been moving slightly out of its normal orbit. For the past 3 weeks, the moon had been captured by human ships using massive tractor beam arrays. Day by day, they had been slowly changing its trajectory. Now it was on a collision course with the planet. The orbital calculations were perfect. Impact would occur in 18 hours. Krillian scientists discovered the problem when they ran routine orbital checks the next morning. By then, it was too late to stop what was coming. "Sir," the sensor operator's voice was filled with panic. "Our moon, it's going to hit us." Vrax stared at the new calculations. The moon would strike Krillos Prime's northern continent with the force of 1 billion nuclear weapons. The impact would shatter the planet's crust and probably destroy all life. "How is this possible?" Vrax demanded. His science officer checked the data 3 times before answering. "The moon has been moved out of its normal orbit. The trajectory changes are very small each day, but they add up over time. Someone has been planning this for weeks." Vrax finally understood. The 3 human ships hadn't been there to attack. They had been there to distract attention while other ships moved the moon. While Krillians had been watching the obvious threat, humans had been preparing a much larger one. "Can we evacuate?" Vrax asked. "Not everyone," the science officer replied. "Maybe 10% of the population if we start now. The rest..." He didn't finish the sentence. On Nebula Home, the gas beings were facing a different kind of horror. The human ships in their atmosphere weren't attacking with weapons. Instead, they were releasing chemicals into the gas giant's upper layers. The nebulae felt the change immediately. Their bodies began to burn. Not with fire, but with chemical reactions that turned their living gas into poison. The pain was beyond anything they had ever experienced. Eldest of Clouds, the leader of their species, tried to send a message to the human ships. "Why are you doing this? We have done nothing to harm your people." The reply came from Admiral Morrison herself. "You allowed your Shadow Consortium allies to capture and torture 300 humans for 50 years. You voted to keep humanity out of the Galactic Council while they murdered our colonies. Your inaction makes you complicit in their crimes." "We did not know," Eldest of Clouds pleaded. "The Shadow Consortium told us nothing of these things." "Ignorance is not innocence," Morrison replied coldly. "Your species lives for thousands of years. You had plenty of time to ask questions about what was being done in your name." The chemical reaction spread through Nebula Home's atmosphere. Billions of nebulae died in agony as their bodies dissolved into toxic clouds. Those that survived fled to the cold outer regions of their world, where they huddled together in terror. On Zephyr Prime, the crystal beings were learning what human science could do when turned to destruction. The human ships had surrounded their world and begun broadcasting specific sound frequencies into the planet's atmosphere. The sounds were based on recordings of Zephyrian music, but they had been modified with human engineering. Instead of creating harmony, they created destructive interference patterns. The frequencies shattered crystal structures at the molecular level. Zephyrian cities began to collapse as their crystalline buildings vibrated apart. The beings themselves suffered even worse. Their bodies resonated with the frequencies until they cracked like broken glass. Guide Zelmar, who had shown Elena around Station Kepler 7, tried to reach the human fleet commander. "Please," he said through the pain of his dissolving body. "Many of us opposed the Shadow Consortium. We argued for human inclusion in the Council." Captain Williams of the human destroyer Retribution answered the call. "Your opposition wasn't enough to save Ambassador Vasquez. Your arguments didn't stop 50 years of human suffering. Good intentions don't matter when children are dying." "But you are killing innocents," Zelmar protested. "So did you," Williams replied. "The difference is that you killed our innocents first." The pattern was repeated across 17 star systems. Each Shadow Consortium world faced a different form of destruction, but all of them shared one thing in common. The attacks were precisely designed to exploit specific weaknesses that humans had spent decades discovering. The rock-eating granite folk found their homeworld bombarded with acids that dissolved their food sources. Without minerals to eat, they would starve in months. The machine beings called Techlings discovered that human computer viruses could infect their electronic bodies, causing them to shut down permanently. The aquatic deep ones watched their ocean worlds boil away as human ships heated their water beyond survival limits. But the most terrifying attack was the one that didn't happen. The Twilight folk had been Shadow Consortium members, but they had also been victims of a plague 20 years earlier. Humans had provided medical aid that saved their species from extinction. Now their homeworld was surrounded by human ships, but no attack came. Instead, Admiral Morrison sent them a message. "You have been spared because you know what it means to face extinction. You know what it feels like to have your species threatened. Remember this day. Remember what happens to those who threaten humanity." The message was clear. Humans could destroy anyone they chose. They could show mercy when they wanted to. The choice was always theirs to make. Across the galaxy, non-Shadow Consortium species watched the destruction in horror. They had thought humans were a primitive species with limited military power. Now they were seeing the systematic annihilation of some of the galaxy's oldest and most powerful civilizations. The peaceful Federation of Rimward Worlds sent a desperate message to Admiral Morrison. "Please stop this slaughter. Many of us had nothing to do with the Shadow Consortium's crimes." Morrison's reply was broadcast to every world in the galaxy. "This is what happens when you allow predators to hunt our people. This is the price of looking the other way while humans suffered. You watched for 50 years while the Shadow Consortium tortured and murdered human beings. Your silence made you accomplices. Some species tried to fight back. The combined fleets of 3 major powers assembled a force of 8,000 ships and moved to intercept human forces near the Granite Folk homeworld. They found 50,000 human ships waiting for them. The battle lasted 6 minutes. Human weapons technology was centuries ahead of what any alien species possessed. Human tactics were based on millions of years of evolutionary warfare. Human ships moved like predators hunting prey, coordinating their attacks with deadly precision. When the shooting stopped, not a single alien vessel remained intact. The survivors were left floating in space in escape pods, broadcasting surrender messages that no one answered. Admiral Morrison sent a message to every military force in the galaxy. "This is what resistance brings you. We have been preparing for this war for 200 years. We know where all of your ships are. We know how your weapons work. We know your tactical doctrines and your strategic plans. You cannot surprise us. You cannot defeat us. You can only choose how you want to die." The psychological effect was devastating. Alien commanders who had been planning counterattacks suddenly realized they were facing an enemy that had been studying them for centuries. Every military secret they thought they had was already known to human intelligence. Every advantage they believed they possessed had already been countered. The Shadow Consortium tried to organize a coordinated defense, but their communications were being intercepted and jammed by human ships. Worse, they discovered that many of their secure channels had been compromised for decades. Humans had been listening to their plans and reading their messages since the conspiracy began. High Commander Vrax made one last attempt to rally Krillian forces. As his world's moon grew larger in the sky, casting an ominous shadow over his dying planet, he broadcast a message to every Krillian warrior in the galaxy. My people, we face extinction at the hands of human savages, but we are Krillians. We do not surrender. We do not beg for mercy. We fight until the last of us falls. The response came not from Krillian warriors, but from Admiral Morrison. Your people are welcome to die fighting if that's what they prefer. But Commander Vrax, there's something you should know about the human you had drugged on Station Kepler 7. Morrison's image appeared on Vrax's command screen. Behind her stood a figure that made Vrax's blood turn to ice. It was Warsinger Thax, very much alive and wearing the uniform of the Terran Navy. Thax has been working for us for 5 years, Morrison explained calmly. He volunteered after the Shadow Consortium murdered his war brother in one of their accidents. He let himself be drugged because we needed someone to take the blame for Elena's assassination. He helped us identify every Shadow Consortium member and every hidden facility. Vrax stared at his old comrade in shock and horror. You betrayed your own species? Thax's response was quiet but firm. I betrayed the species that betrayed honor itself. The Shadow Consortium perverted everything warriors are supposed to stand for. They fought from shadows against innocence. They had no courage, no integrity, no strength. They deserved no loyalty. The revelation broke Krillian morale completely. If their own Warsingers were working with humans, if their most trusted commanders were actually enemy agents, then they had already lost this war before it began. Similar scenes played out across the Shadow Consortium worlds. Trusted allies revealed themselves as human agents. Secret plans were exposed as human intelligence operations. Every advantage the aliens thought they had turned out to be an illusion, carefully maintained by human spies and saboteurs. The galaxy learned a hard lesson that day. Humans had spent 300 years appearing weak and primitive, while they gathered intelligence and prepared for war. They had been patient, methodical, and absolutely ruthless in their planning. The Shadow Consortium had thought they were fighting a young species with limited experience. Instead, they were fighting apex predators who had spent millions of years learning how to hunt and kill everything that threatened them. The war was effectively over in 72 hours, but the dying would continue for months as human weapons completed their work, and alien worlds burned in the darkness between the stars. 6 months after Elena Vasquez died, the galaxy was a very different place. Admiral Sarah Morrison stood on the bridge of her flagship, looking out at what had once been called the Galactic Council headquarters. Now it was called Terra Station, and it belonged to humanity. The old council chambers had been gutted and rebuilt. Where aliens had once debated policy, human administrators now issued orders to a galaxy that had learned to obey. Admiral, her communications officer reported, we're receiving another surrender request. This time from the Spiral Arm Coalition. They're offering complete submission in exchange for protection. Morrison nodded without emotion. The surrender offers came daily now. Alien species that had never heard of the Shadow Consortium were desperate to prove their innocence and avoid humanity's wrath. They offered tribute, military service, even their homeworlds in exchange for the promise that human fleets wouldn't arrive to judge them. Add them to the review list, Morrison said. We'll evaluate their request after the investigation teams finish their work. The investigation teams were one of Morrison's innovations. Human intelligence agents now traveled throughout the galaxy, examining the records of every species and government. They looked for evidence of Shadow Consortium involvement, human rights violations, or simple indifference to human suffering. Based on what they found, species were classified as allies, neutrals, or enemies. Allies received human protection and trade benefits. Neutrals were left alone but watched carefully. Enemies ceased to exist. The Shadow Consortium members were already gone. Krillos Prime was a dead world, its moon having completed its deadly impact months earlier. Nebula Home was a toxic cloud drifting through space, its gas being inhabitants reduced to poisonous vapor. Zephyr Prime was a field of crystal dust, its musical cities silenced forever. 17 worlds that had plotted humanity's destruction were now nothing but rocks and radiation in the darkness. But the destruction of the Shadow Consortium was only the beginning. Humanity had learned that the galaxy was full of species that had known about human suffering and chosen to do nothing. Worse, many had actively helped the conspiracy. Through their silence and indifference, those species were learning what indifference cost. The Merchant Guild of Centauri had refused to trade with human colonies for 50 years, following Shadow Consortium pressure. Now their trade routes belonged to human corporations, and their ships were banned from entering human space. Guild members who had once controlled galactic commerce found themselves begging for permission to carry cargo between minor worlds. The Academic Alliance had rejected human applications to their universities while allowing Shadow Consortium species to study human biology for weapons research. Now their greatest scholars worked as research assistants to human scientists, grateful for any opportunity to contribute to human knowledge. The religious orders of the Outer Rim had preached that humans were spiritually inferior beings, unworthy of salvation. Now they spent their days in meditation, contemplating the theological implications of being conquered by the inferior species they had rejected. Morrison walked through Terra Station's command center, observing the efficient work of human administrators. They processed requests from alien governments, monitored compliance with human regulations, and coordinated the activities of enforcement fleets throughout the galaxy. Status report, Morrison ordered. Commander Singh handed her a data pad. Compliance is at 93%. The remaining holdout systems are mostly in the far reaches, beyond practical enforcement range. Intelligence suggests they're planning to flee to other galaxies rather than submit to human authority. Morrison studied the report. Some species had chosen exile over submission, abandoning their homeworlds to escape human justice. They were welcome to leave. The galaxy would be better without them. What about reconstruction efforts? She asked. Proceeding ahead of schedule, Singh replied. The Twilight folk have volunteered their entire industrial capacity to support human infrastructure projects. The Machine Collective is providing computational services at no cost. Even some former Shadow Consortium allies are trying to prove their loyalty through material contributions. Morrison nodded. Fear was an excellent motivator, but it wasn't enough to build a stable galactic government. Humans needed some species to genuinely support their rule, not just submit to it. The species that had actually helped humans during the Shadow Consortium years were being rewarded accordingly. She walked to the observation deck where a memorial had been built for Elena Vasquez. The statue showed Elena as she had been in life, hopeful, determined, reaching out in friendship to the galaxy that had murdered her. The inscription beneath read, "She came in peace. Those who answered with violence learned why peace was humanity's choice, not our nature." Every day, representatives from alien species came to leave offerings at Elena's memorial. Flowers from worlds humanity had never heard of. Artworks created by beings humans had never met. Poems written in languages humans were still learning to speak. They came not because they had loved Elena, but because they understood what her death had cost the galaxy. Her murder had awakened something in humanity that the aliens were still struggling to comprehend. "Admiral," a voice said behind her. Morrison turned to see Dr. Jennifer Walsh, the former geologist who now served as Director of Alien Affairs. "The Peaceful Federation wants to discuss the rehabilitation accords. They're asking for modifications to the cultural preservation clauses." Morrison smiled slightly. The rehabilitation accords were humanity's blueprint for governing the galaxy. They established human authority, while allowing alien species to maintain their cultures and governments, as long as those cultures didn't conflict with human values. The process was complex and sometimes controversial. Some alien practices that humans found abhorrent, like the Vorthan tradition of sacrificing criminals to black holes, were banned completely. Others were modified to meet human standards. A few were actually improved through human input. "What kind of modifications?" Morrison asked. "They want permission to maintain their traditional trial by combat legal system," Walsh explained, "but they're willing to accept human observers to ensure the fights are fair and voluntary." Morrison considered this. The Peaceful Federation had been genuinely peaceful during the Shadow Consortium years. They had opposed human exclusion from the Galactic Council and had provided aid to human colonies when they could. "They deserved consideration, approved," she said. "But make it clear that any abuse of the system will result in immediate suspension of their autonomy." This was how the new galaxy worked. Alien species that had proven themselves trustworthy were given significant freedom to govern themselves. Those with questionable histories were watched more closely. Those with hostile records found themselves under direct human administration. The system was harsh but effective. For the first time in galactic history, there were no wars between major powers. Piracy had virtually disappeared. Trade flowed freely under human protection. Even ancient enemies were forced to work together under human oversight. Some aliens called it tyranny. Others called it peace. Morrison called it justice. She walked to another section of the memorial, where the names of the 300 humans who had died in Shadow Consortium experiments were carved into black stone. Each name represented a life cut short by alien cruelty. Each name was a reminder of why humanity had taken control of galactic civilization. Admiral Morrison, another voice called. This time it was Captain Marcus Chen, the man who had investigated Elena's murder. He now served as head of Human Intelligence Services. "What is it, Marcus?" Morrison asked. "We've received a message from the Andromeda Galaxy," Chen said. "It seems word of what happened here has reached other galactic communities. They want to establish diplomatic relations with humanity." Morrison raised an eyebrow. "What kind of diplomatic relations?" "The kind where they promise never to threaten human interests and hope we promise never to visit their galaxy," Chen replied with a slight smile. Morrison laughed. The first time she had done so since Elena's death. Even aliens in other galaxies had heard about humanity's response to Elena's murder. The story had become legend. A young species that had seemed peaceful and weak had revealed itself to be the most dangerous force in known space. "Tell them we're too busy to visit other galaxies right now," Morrison said. "But remind them that we have very good memories and very long lifespans. If any of their people ever harm humans, we'll be happy to make the trip." The message would be clear. Humanity was content to rule one galaxy for now, but their reach could extend much further if necessary. Let the aliens of Andromeda and beyond govern themselves wisely, knowing that Earth's children were watching from afar. Morrison returned to the memorial statue of Elena Vasquez. 6 months ago, Elena had stood before the Galactic Council asking for nothing more than acceptance and cooperation. She had offered friendship and received murder in return. Now Elena's people ruled the galaxy that had rejected her. They governed with firm justice and absolute authority. They had brought peace through overwhelming force and unity through undeniable power. "You would have done this better," Morrison said quietly to the statue. "You would have found a way to make them partners instead of subjects. You always believed the best of everyone." But Elena was gone, murdered by the very aliens she had tried to befriend. The galaxy had chosen to answer humanity's extended hand with violence and treachery. Now they lived with the consequences of that choice. Morrison looked out at the stars visible through the station's windows. Somewhere in that vast darkness, human fleets patrolled the space lanes and kept the peace. Human administrators governed alien worlds with firm but fair authority. Human scientists studied alien cultures and technologies, always looking for ways to improve galactic civilization. The galaxy was safe now. It was prosperous and peaceful and united under human leadership. Children of every species could grow up without fear of war or oppression. Trade and culture flowed freely between worlds that had once been enemies. It was everything Elena had dreamed of, achieved through everything Elena had opposed. But Morrison had no regrets. The galaxy had been given a choice between Elena's way and humanity's way. They had chosen poorly and paid accordingly. Now they lived under the rule of the species they had tried to destroy. The age of human diplomacy had ended with Elena's death. The age of human dominance would last forever. In the end, the galaxy learned that humanity's greatest gift to the universe wasn't their technology or their culture or their ideals. It was their restraint. When that restraint was finally broken, when humanity's peaceful nature was finally abandoned, the universe discovered why Earth's apex predators had never needed to fear anything else. They had tried to be neighbors. Now they were rulers. And in the cold mathematics of galactic politics, that was probably what they had always been meant to be. Elena Vasquez had died asking for peace. Her death had brought peace to the galaxy, just not in the way she would have wanted. But it was peace nonetheless, eternal and absolute. enforced by the species that had learned long ago that sometimes the only way to protect what you love is to become something your enemies will never forget.